Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and here on the last day of the year, approaching the new year, we have one more quick video to discuss, and this one is about a new leak regarding Pokémon apparently. It's coming from a popular Pokémon leaker, and it could very well be suggesting that the long-awaited black and white remakes are going to be coming to Nintendo Switch 2. So that's what we're going to be discussing a little bit today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to briefly ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit that notification bell, and if you are unsure, watch through this video and then decide. So the leaker in question here is Riddler Coup. Many of you may be familiar with them if you are acquainted with Pokemon leaks and rumors. And since earlier this year, the Riddler hasn't been given as much credibility by the masses because many felt that they were teasing a black and white announcement of some kind, and that did not happen at the Pokemon Presents, and instead what we got was Pokemon Legends ZA. And so there seems to be this ongoing debate of whether the Riddler is a legitimate leaker, because they say everything in riddle form, hence why we refer to them as the Riddler, and that's also their Twitter handle. But if you look throughout the history of the Riddler, they have certainly teased things about Pokemon that were legitimate leaks. And in more recent times, they have said some things that also were clearly legitimate leaks. Recently, the Riddler talked about there being a shiny Rayquaza Terra Raid event. That has happened. And perhaps what is a bigger deal is that the Riddler has been talking about Project Ikaku for some time, and Project Ikaku is actually the codename for Pokemon Legends ZA, which we learned about from the Terra leak. So, for those who are unfamiliar with the Terra leak, there was this massive leak of information from Game Freak and Pokemon Company where we learned about a whole bunch of different projects that were not meant to be seen by the public, and we got a lot of info about a lot of different things, including the official codename for Pokemon Legends ZA and the Nintendo Switch 2. For Pokemon Legends ZA, it was Ikaku, and for the Switch 2, it was Ounce. And so, point being, really the only realistic way that the Riddler could have known about the codename without ever having gone out to the public before is by them having some level of access to this private information. And so, yes, I do think the Riddler still has some level of information when it comes to Pokemon things that aren't meant to be public info yet. Does that mean everything they say is going to come to fruition? No, it does not necessarily mean that. Plans can change. Maybe not all their sources are correct. Maybe they might just lie about things purely for clout, and they only say accurate things sometimes when the info comes in. There's a variety of possibilities. Take what's being said here with a grain of salt, but I do think there's absolutely reason to have a conversation about this because there's a solid % chance that this could be true. And so what's being said this time? Happy New Year to you all. The latest project, which was not exposed from the Terra leak on NS2, Nintendo Switch 2, is here. Enjoy. And what we see is a picture of a dolphin. But not just any dolphin. A black and white dolphin. Also known as the Commerson's dolphin. You can see the same image right here. How did I find this? By searching black and white dolphins. Is the same image that the Riddler used. So very likely, in order to make this tweet, they searched black and white dolphins because they're talking about Pokemon Black and White. They must know about the code name for this game, which may very well have to do with this dolphin here, because actually a lot of Pokemon code names have to do with the sea or ocean in some way. Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee had the codename for Beluga, like the beluga whale. Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire had Songo, as in coral. Pokemon X and Y had the codename Kuji, as in big fish, so for those thinking that the sea-related codenames just have to do with remakes of some kind, well, X and Y is not a remake, and it still had a sea-related codename, so I don't think that having to do with a dolphin or anything like that means that it has to be a remake, but when we're talking about a black and white dolphin, black and white remakes come to mind. Now, to be clear here, we are not being told about the codename for this project yet. taking a look at what else the Riddler had to say here, that Trainer D asked, "What happened? I'm confused as to what this means." The Riddler says, "A new project besides Ikaku and Gaia." Ikaku, as we already discussed, is Pokemon Legends ZA, and Gaia is Pokemon Generation 10. So we know this is a new project. And then Dimitri here asks, main or side game? And the Riddler says main. So they are saying that this is a mainline game that isn't Pokemon Legends ZA, it isn't Generation 10, and they're using a black and white dolphin to represent this, and as I discussed, if you literally search black and white dolphin, this pops up. So I think it's very likely they know about the codename for this project, they know it's a remake of Black and White, which is why they are teasing us with a black and white dolphin. And this is also coming to Nintendo Switch 2. So I have some thoughts here, assuming this is true. Of course, take it with a grain of salt. When would this remake, presumably, come out? Pokemon Legends ZA is supposed to come out next year, and we haven't gotten any footage or information on the game yet, so I would assume that Pokemon Legends ZA is going to come out later into the year, thus making it less likely that they would release another mainline game in the same year. And then if Generation 10 is supposed to come out the year afterwards, 2026, then you would assume that that would be the primary thing they market throughout the entire year as well. So where does this Black and White remake fit in here? Is it going to come out sooner, or is it going to come out later? Well, I think we should remind ourselves that Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, the remake for Generation 4, came out holiday 2021. So if these Black and White remakes come out, let's say holiday 2025, they somehow fit in 2 Pokemon games in the same calendar year, then that would be a 4-year gap. Which I would say would be a very quick turnaround, especially considering that before Generation 4, the Generation 3 remakes, Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, those came out in 2014, 7 years prior to Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. However, Heart Gold Soul Silver, the Generation 2 remakes, came out in 2009, 5 years beforehand. And then Pokemon Fire Red Leaf Green came out in 2004, albeit early 2004, so a few months less than 6 years beforehand. And so considering all the gaps in time between these different generational remakes, to see Black and White remakes before the release of Generation 10 in 2026, I would say should be unexpected. So in my opinion, if we are to believe the Riddler here, then we are hearing about this project well in advance, and this won't be coming out till 2027, if not even 2028. Because let's say we get Generation 10 in 2026, they're probably going to want to have the DLC waves be the big focus the year afterwards. And so when do we start worrying about a remake? The year after that. Which places us in 2028, which would be 7 years after the release of Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, which honestly makes a decent amount more sense in my opinion. And maybe this is why we didn't see this project leaked from the Terra League, because this is a very recent new project that's in the very beginning stages right now. And so perhaps that's why the Riddler is now sharing this info, because they just learned about it because it just became a reality. Either that, or maybe they're just full of it. Some people might be speculating that they are just going to have a very quick turnaround for this remake this time, and they're going to fit it into the same year or very early into the year after Legends ZA. So either late 2025 or early 2026, Legends ZA maybe comes out in the summer or something like that. Which I will say, they did release Pokemon Legends Arceus January, 2 months after release of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, November 2021. So to squeeze in 2 different mainline games like this in quick succession, they've done it before. I doubt it this time given the other circumstances, but it is still at least somewhat possible. I, however, am definitely leaning in the direction of, assuming this is true, that this remake project for Black and White is starting around now. That's why the Riddler is talking about it, because they're just kind of hearing about it. It's in the beginning stages, and it probably will be coming out in the year 2028 towards the holidays, which I find really interesting because it would then mean it would have about a 4-year development cycle, And if we are correct on when Generation 10 is coming out, which is seeming really likely right now for Holiday 2026, then what I believe we are starting to look at now is, as opposed to a 3-year cycle for Pokemon games, it's now a 4-year cycle for Pokemon games. And so that grants Game Freak more time between their different Pokemon projects, and thus more content, more quality, and overall better reception for their different games. And given that they now have the Legend series, and remakes, and DLC, and the next generation games, they can still theoretically have something pretty much every single year. But between their different teams and supporting developers, they can put in the right amount of work and time for these different projects. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.